chambers. If you'd now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Beth.
Granquist?
Here.
Langy?
Here.
Merrill?
Here.
Weebelhaus?
Here.
Murin?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Clausen?
Here.
File.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Okay, that takes us to the public hearings and related action portion of the agenda. Item number 21. I will open this public hearing to consider an amendment to sections 22-20 and 23-42 of the City Code regarding sidewalks, and to amend section 23-52 regarding street design gradients. And to open the hearing, Steve, could you give us some background, please?
Yes, Mayor. The code changes relative. Thanks, Beth. The code changes relative to the sidewalk or the street. Which one do you want to do first, street grade or sidewalk?
Let's do sidewalks, please.
The code amendment related to the sidewalk change is to modify our current minimum sidewalk standard from a 4-foot standard to a 5-foot standard. That is kind of a change within the state of Nebraska as well as a change nationally, just to kind of review some of those in organizations that are helping move that direction. The Institute of Transportation Engineers recommends 5-foot minimum residential sidewalk. Walk America org recommends a 5-foot minimum sidewalk. The Bike Walk Nebraska organization, again, recommends 5-foot sidewalk. National Association of City Transportation Officials also recommends 5-foot residential sidewalk. And certainly more significant would be the National Safe Routes to Schools program also recommends a 5-foot sidewalk to safely navigate our children to their K-12 systems and home. An IT study done about 15 years ago through UC Berkeley showed that 62% of communities surveyed were at a 5-foot sidewalk compared to 32% at that time that were still at 4-foot sidewalks. So that's some of the history, and I would guess that over the time since that study was done, that number's probably increased a little bit more as well. Surveying some of our peer cities, Hastings, I did not get an answer back from North Platte. Hastings is currently at 5, Kearney is at 4, Grand Island is at 5, Papillion is at 4, likely headed to 5 as a function of Omaha going to 5. La Vista, same thing. They are going to be following Omaha, so they'll be headed towards 5. Columbus currently at 4. Norfolk at 4. Fremont at 4. Nebraska City's gone 5. I happen to be in a conversation with Nebraska City, so I captured that, but typically I wouldn't necessarily go down to a 7,000 population city as a peer city. And then, of course, Lincoln and Omaha also at 5. So that's some of the statistics that I gathered as I was headed this way. It's about safely navigating our sidewalks. If you're a walker and you're out there, you walk with a spouse, or you walk with a family, children. 4 feet is difficult to have 2 people navigate shoulder to shoulder and stay within the boundary of the sidewalk. So again, recommending we go 5 as a function of just the growth, future growth of the community, trying to stay in in compliance kind of with where we are headed nationally.
So with the 5-foot sidewalk, then we'd be taking that out of the right-of-way of the street?
Yes,
So that'd go from 10-foot green to 9-foot green
Yes.
space. And then with the 5-foot sidewalk, are we be eliminating our grade requirements? You know, if we can't go over 8% or 10% grade on a hill? Because right now we have it where you gotta go down, hit a flat spot.
right.
Yeah.
And so we'll bleed that into the next conversation, which is a change in our grades. Currently, we have a minimum profile grade of 0.15% in the city code. I really couldn't trace that down since I've been in this profession or in this environment since the early 80s. 0.3% has always been the flattest grade we've ever designed to. That's been in the national design standards as well as your state's design standards. The only thing I can figure is that at some point, that 0.15% is starting to get pretty close to what we'd install sewer grades at, storm sewer grades. And I think that's probably where that probably came from. Nationally now, everybody's headed towards 0.5%. That gives us a little bit more construction tolerance. You know, there's still some tolerance for design, a design waiver to get a little bit lower, maybe 0.45% or something like that. But 0.5% is a good place to be for a minimum design. On the maximum side, again, historically, 10% was a pretty common maximum design grade as a function of the ADA guidelines. More in the last decade or so, communities have been cutting back that 10% back to about 8%. If you build your sidewalk parallel to your curb line, you can build it at that 8% without having those grade breaks for ADA breaks. If you move away from paralleling that to the back of curb, you move outside the right-of-way or something like that, then now you do have to start to meet those ADA breaks.
With the 5-foot even?
Yes.
Because a 5-foot would be a full turning radius for ADA. So we'd
If you-
still be requiring the grade break.
If you move away from a parallel sidewalk, but as long as that sidewalk's paralleling,
Oh, parallel, okay, then
Yep.
you don't necessarily need the grade break.
Right.
Okay.
So 5 feet is ADA and 4 feet is not?
4 feet meets ADA, but where you've got a grade break or a turning movement, you've got to have the 5.
Okay. And any of the conversations, Steve, you've had with those other communities, has there been a lot of pushback on requiring, kind of mandating a 25% increase in your sidewalk cost?
I didn't specifically ask, but in the conversations, there was no indication that there had been any pushback.
Okay. All right.
Is this benefit the public out here, and I read it in here, but this only applies to new construction, new developments. I think of most of where everybody lives where I'm at, they're 4-foot sidewalks, and if we had to replace our sidewalk, do we have to go back to 5, marry up with the 4s?
I would say this really applies to new. You know, we're not going to go back in time and change that. You know, there's neighborhoods where maybe it's 50, 60, 70% built out. We're not going to insert a chunk of 5-foot sidewalk in there. We have had some conversation about, you know, what do you do in a neighborhood that's maybe one lot or something like that in some of these newer developments. But I think we just look at this for now as moving forward, new plats coming in, new subdivisions.
All right.
Steve, are you seeing new developments and new developers being willing to put in wider than 4 voluntarily?
Yes, we have been messaging this for about a year or so that we're probably headed this direction. More so in some of our multifamily developments, we've asked them to go to 5. I think most have gone to 5s. I don't want to specifically state some of our other subdivisions, but I'm pretty confident one of the newer subdivisions coming up is putting in 5-foot sidewalks as well.
Going back to the street gradient discussion, can we, for sake of public discussion, can we talk about why it's important to consider increasing that design standard?
Sure. Again, the 0.1%, it's really about drainage and getting that water to move down the curb. And with a 0.1%, that's, 1% would be 1 foot in 100. So the grade change would be from a half a foot in 100 is what we're asking to go to, half a foot a drop for every 100 feet of run. Through frost movements, through construction tolerances, at 0.15%, it's pretty easy to lose that. And then you get some of the bird bathing that occurs in the gutters. It's hard to get the grades to work as you're going around corners at intersections, so you end up with a lot of pooling in the corners of the intersections. That 0.5% grade, the 0.5% gives you something to work with through those situations when you're doing the design. And it's really about, again, going back to the drainage. The only way I explain it to people is drainage is like cancer to a road, or water is. And so we want to get that water off, and we want to get it off as quickly and as efficiently as we can. You drive around the community and you're going to see some residential streets out there that are very flat, and those are probably built at the 0.15%. So,
And those are also the ones that we're seeing problems in cracking and degradation. Okay. Any other questions for Steve?
again, I didn't necessarily write down the statistics, but as I'm looking at these communities and looking at sidewalks, I was looking at that, and I would say by far the majority, probably 80–90% are at that 0.5% and 8%.
This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now.
Do we have any numbers reflecting what the cost, I mean, if we're talking about streets, we're talking about grade tolerance, you're talking about bringing in a lot more soil compaction, soil, earth movement, I mean.
We balance that within the sections, so it would be a balance of cut and fills. You know, I wouldn't see that that's going to increase the cost of construction. On the sidewalk side, yeah, there's going to be a little increase there. I'd say the average residential lot's probably $500 increase for that foot.
New.
New.
If we're going into existing, then it's going to be a little more than that, because you've got sprinkler systems. If
Right.
When we start adding requiring people to put sidewalks in, are we going to be going with the 5 or the 4?
And that's where some of the cities, you'll still see a little conversation. Some completely get rid of the 4-foot conversation within their code. Some leave it in there as a minimum, because how do you address the people that are going to go back and put a 4-foot back? So they'll leave that 4-foot minimum there, but 5 foot's the design standard.
It maybe hinges on what Councilman Clausen said. If you already have a 4-foot sidewalk and you have to replace it for, you know, whatever reason, it's deteriorating, your entire neighborhood's 4-foot, are we gonna require them to go back with a 5-foot?
No.
That's the question, and he
Yeah.
referred to that a little bit.
No.
And that's not how this code change is written, correct?
This is just new going forward. New build.
But a new build then would be if we enforce a neighborhood to put in sidewalks. That would be new build. So then we'd be going to the 4, or we. So if you have a neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalks, doesn't
Right, if
matter.
it was platted prior to 1984, that becomes a question.
Okay.
If it's platted after 1984, those plats have a note in there that says 4-foot sidewalk per city code. So at least our conversation to date has been that anything that is platted between 1984 and today and says it's a 4-foot sidewalk would be a 4-foot sidewalk.
Gotcha.
Anything platted going forward would have a 5-foot sidewalk.
So, but what if, okay, I'm sorry, but if a neighborhood was platted without sidewalks on the
Pre-1984,
4, yeah, then we're
it
going
would be
back to
5-foot sidewalk.
That would include original, you know, we have original neighborhoods to the community that have been around for 85, 90 years.
If they have sidewalk, no. If there's existing 4-foot sidewalk in there, it'd be 4-foot sidewalk.
All right, thank you.
Well, coming from a residence that has the very flat paving out front, I wish this had been in place in the time, because if it rains a quarter of an inch, I have a duck pond for at least a day and a half. And the 5-foot sidewalk, I think, is actually quite beneficial if you watch people as they walk. I mean, our bodies take up, if you walk pair and pair, our bodies take up 5 foot. And whether, you know, I believe our communities are becoming more walking friendly, and this just helps enhance that. And, you know, for the minimal amount of dollars, the amount of time that we live there, you take that minimal amount of that, say that 500 that you tossed on out, you take that over a 10-year time period, and how much that adds to the quality of your neighborhood and or your living space there. I mean, it's nothing, so.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Seeing no one, we'll close the discussion and move to Planning Commission report. Please, Beth.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 21st, 2019 to consider an amendment to sections 22-20 and 23-42 of the official city code regarding sidewalks, and to amend section 23-52 regarding street design gradients. The Planning Commission recommends approval on a 9-0 vote.
Okay, thank you, Beth. With that, I will close the hearing and move to item number 22. Would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5617, approving an amendment to sections 22-20 and 23-42 of the city code regarding sidewalks, and to amend section 23-52 regarding street design gradients.
Your Honor, I'd offer for consideration ordinance number 5617.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on this, council? Questions for Steve? So I would echo some of Councilman Laney's comments on the importance of looking forward, and this applying only to new development. Creating a more walkable community, I think, is going to be more and more important moving forward, and one of those things that helps increase our quality of life. So I do support these changes, and I think the design standard changes are equally or more important in terms of preservation of our street systems and building roads that will last. So with that, any further discussion, comments, council? If not, short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend section 22-20 of the official city code to change the minimum width of a sidewalk from 4 feet to 5 feet, to amend section 23-42 to require that all sidewalks be in place at such time as a subdivision is 90% built out, to amend section 23-52 to change the minimum design gradient of a street in a subdivision from 0.15% to 0.5%, and the maximum design gradient from 10% to 8%, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
Voting in favor of the ordinance on first reading, council members Granquist, Lange, Merrill, Weebelhaus, Murin, Jackson, File. Voting against the ordinance, Councilmember Clausen. Ordinance 5617 carries on first reading.
Okay,
Your Honor, I'd move that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third reading.
Second.
motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third. If no further discussion, please vote.
Voting in favor of suspending the rules and passing ordinance 5617 on second and third reading, council members Granquist, Lange, Merrill, Weebelhaus, Murin, Jackson. File. Voting against the ordinance, Councilmember Clausen. Ordinance 5617 carries on second and third.
Okay, item 23, I will open this public hearing at the request of Black Hills Nebraska Gas Utility Company, LLC, to consider a hard surfacing waiver at 2010 West Omaha Avenue. And to kick off the discussion, Val, could you give us some background, please?
Yes, thank you. This area is at the intersection of 20th Street and Omaha Avenue behind Shopco. There's some empty land there that they would like to build a maintenance yard and building, I believe it is. They are asking for a hard surfacing waiver, and it's easier to kind of look at the picture. It's the back area here where the parking is, and then the ingress egress to Omaha Avenue to the south. They are asking for a complete waiver of pavement for that area. And so you'll see two resolutions attached. One is the resolution as it's asked for. Just to let you know, they asked for an indefinite period of time, did not put a year to it, so there is a blank in the resolution if you would like to go with that one. So the motion, if you would like to go with that, needs to have a year added to that or an indefinite time frame so that we can add that in. The Planning Commission actually recommended that the lot remain gravel, but they pave the ingress egress from Omaha up to the gated fence area, which is approximately about 80 feet. Standard that we have been giving for industrial and commercial potential is 100-foot pavement, and then they can do gravel after that. So this 80-foot would be kind of in where we have been giving waivers for. And so that would be the second resolution that is your option tonight. Actually attached to would be the Planning Commission recommendation. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Val. Any questions for Val? This is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, seeing no one. Planning Commission report, please, Beth.
On May 21st, 2019, the Norfolk Planning Commission reviewed the application for modification of a hard surface requirement submitted by Black Hills Nebraska Gas Utility Company, LLC. The application submitted followed Norfolk City Code 27-351 as requested for the property at 2010 West Omaha. The motion to approve the hard surfacing waiver request with the exception to hard surface ingress egress drive from Omaha Avenue up to the fence line as shown on the site plan was approved by the Planning Commission with a 9-0 vote.
Okay, thank you, Beth. I will close the hearing and move to item number 24. Look for a motion to consider resolution number 2019-30, approving the hard surfacing waiver for Black Hills Nebraska Gas Utility Company, LLC at 2010 West Omaha Avenue.
I'll make a motion for consideration of resolution number 2019-30.
Second.
Which version? We need to know which version.
Oh, I'd go with the amended version where it's the concrete going up to the fence line.
So the second version that Val explained to us.
That's correct, the second version. Which is, I believe, is the one that was voted 9-0 on.
On the Planning Commission approved recommendation, okay. Okay, motion and second on the second version of the resolution as approved by the Planning Commission.
You don't need it.
Any further discussion on this, council? Questions?
I think Jim and I were talking here, do I need to, with that going to the fence line, do you still have to have a time frame on that, being that it's gonna be to the edge of the property at 80 feet rather than, indefinite? You know, if it's indefinite, we leave it at 80 feet. If there's a time frame, then that could expire and they have to add 20 more feet, which doesn't necessarily make sense. You know what I mean there? Because it's already going to the fence line anyway. If the rest of the property's not concrete, wouldn't make a lot of sense to go. So I would say it's probably indefinite, I guess, on putting this out on this motion for the resolution.
How,
I can agree with that.
how is that addressed in the language, Val?
The second resolution, I kind of assumes the indefinite time frame of the actual parking area, and then it actually says that it will be paved up to the fence line as shown on the site plan, and we'll attach the site plan to it.
I think that satisfies that
I
concern.
believe so.
And just to clarify, Val, this is just a yard for them to store their bigger trucks or equipment and things of that nature, not for the public coming in and out, et cetera.
Correct, yes.
Okay, any other discussion, comments, council?
I would say I think that's kind of a good compromise on it that way too, in so much as, you know, along with that and what we voted on here within, you know, the last month, the stormwater stuff, this creates a sense of some permeability. And so that, you know, that's not getting a lot of traffic there, but what traffic does come and go from there, that 80-foot worth of paving has for drop-off areas, so we aren't dropping it out onto the streets yet. We're maintaining, you know, we don't have pavement, which is a non-pervious surface, and then suddenly we're dealing with all that too. So I think this is a real excellent compromise that way.
Well stated. Any other discussion, council? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Resolution 2019-30, version B is adopted.
Okay, item 25, that moves us to our regular agenda. Item number 25, look for a motion to consider resolution number 2019-31, approving a sidewalk waiver for Black Hills, Nebraska Gas Utility Company LLC on property addressed as 2010 West Omaha Avenue.
I'll offer consideration resolution 2019-31.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. And Val, can you give us a little bit of context on the sidewalk waiver discussion during the Planning Commission?
Yes, thank you. This is the same piece of property that we just discussed for the hard surfacing waiver. It's this corner right down here behind Shopco. The Planning Commission had quite a bit of discussion on this, and they ultimately voted to deny the sidewalk waiver. I believe some of the discussion was this area is getting built out with, you know, the Shopco potentially becoming something new. The cross from 20th Street across 275, that they felt that it would be a benefit to start somewhere, and this would be a good place to start with the sidewalk waiver, which is why they voted to deny it. But you do have a resolution to approve it, you know, as the request for both 20th Street and Omaha before you tonight.
So the Planning Commission voted to deny the waiver?
Correct, both streets, 20th and
Yeah.
Omaha.
Was that a unanimous vote? Do you
Yes.
recall? Okay. Okay. All right. Questions for Val on this or discussion, council? I guess I would, I share the sentiment of the Planning Commission in this regard in terms of this is an area that most likely will see continued growth. And we've seen that where we do not order in sidewalks, when the property is being developed, it's very hard to go back and put those in where they very often are needed. So in my opinion, it would be prudent for us to require the sidewalk to go in.
Your Honor, I'd have to concur with your sentiments there on this, along with, you know, I think just, you know, with everything else that's going on in the area down there, the trail that's not too far away, the increase in commercial development and the increase in our people, you know, I'd rather have somebody on that sidewalk walking there or riding a bike there in lieu of them being out on Omaha Avenue with the amount of traffic that occurs on it. And I believe this is really the time to be doing that. You know, is it some additional expense? Yeah, but percentage-wise versus what this development's costing, it's minuscule. So, to grant the waiver, I think would be a very poor decision on our part.
And that,
Would this be a 4-foot or 5-foot sidewalk?
It's 5 foot as, the plat shows 5 foot, so. I knew that one was coming too.
predictable, Councilman. I think that public safety point is a very good one. Any other discussion, Council? Okay. Hearing none, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Short title, please.
On May 21st, 2019, the Norfolk Planning Commission reviewed the application for a waiver of sidewalk of subdivision requirements submitted by Black Hills, Nebraska Gas Utility Company. The waiver of minimum subdivision sidewalk requirements is requested as those set forth in Chapter 2342. The Planning Commission voted to deny the sidewalk waiver in a 9-0 vote.
Okay. And as a reminder, the resolution before us is to approve a sidewalk waiver in this case. So with that, please vote.
Voting in favor of Resolution 2019-31, nobody. Voting against the resolution, all councilmen present, the resolution is denied.
Item 26, I would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5618, authorizing issuance of $2,805,000 special assessment bond anticipation notes for paving districts 513 and 515, water districts 121, 122, and 123, sewer district 252, and sidewalk district 2019-2.
Your Honor, I'd move for consideration of ordinance number 5618. Second.
Okay, motion and second. And Randy, could you give us some background on this?
Yes, Your Honor. This ordinance, as you mentioned, authorizes issuance of $2,805,000 of special assessment bond anticipation notes for paving District 513, which is Georgia Avenue, paving District 515 for Square Turn Boulevard, along with Sidewalk District 2019-2 for Square Turn Boulevard, Water Districts 121 and Water Districts 122 for the Northeast Industrial Water Main extensions, and Water District 123 and Sewer District 252 for the main extensions by Victory Road. Note issue cost and interest to January 1, 2022 were added, resulting in a total note issue of $2,805,000. The ordinance also approves a preliminary official statement included in the agenda packet. These are 3-year notes with a 1-year par call. Emeritus is underwriting the issue for 0.75%. Since the interest rate of 2% assumes approval at tonight's council meeting, I recommend passage on all 3 readings. Jay Spearman from Emeritus is here tonight. Neither he or I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Randy, what was that interest rate again?
2%.
2%. Thank you.
Which seems pretty competitive in this environment. Is that correct, Randy?
Yes, I think that's a fair interest rate.
And Randy, by combining all of these together, does that give us a better rate? And if you split these out individually?
It might give us a little bit better rate compared to having a whole bunch of small districts, especially the small sidewalk district. But primarily, it saves us a lot of bookkeeping and staff time trying to track and pay for multiple small note issues. We normally try to combine these into a big note issue if possible versus a number of small note issues.
And in the end, since these are assessable bonds for special assessment, that would save the people being assessed some cost too by going with this better rate that we're able to get?
Yes, it would. The better the rate, the the interest rate that accrues during the construction period will be added to the assessment cost. So the lower the interest rate, the lower the assessments.
Just wanted to add that there's a couple districts in here that I've been consistent, I've been opposed to, but the other districts have been supportive, and if this will save money for everyone across the board, you know, I can lean to support this. It's a pretty large amount to expend.
Okay. So I'd say, I think this is a prudent way to finance some sound investments in infrastructure that will promote further growth and public safety. And so I appreciate the staff work that went into putting this together. Any other discussion or comments or questions, council? Okay, hearing none, short title. Ms. Beck.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bond anticipation notes of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska in the principal amount of $2,805,000 for the purpose of providing interim financing to pay the cost of street improvements in Paving District Number 513 and Gap Paving District 515, sidewalk improvements in Sidewalk District 2019-2, sewer improvements in Sewer District Number 252, water improvements in Water Districts 121, 122, and 123, pending the issuance of permanent general obligation various purpose bonds of the city, prescribing the form of said notes, agreeing to issue the city's general obligation various purpose bonds to pay the notes at maturity or to pay the notes from other available funds, entering into a contract on behalf of the city with the holders of said notes, authorizing the officers of the city to make arrangements for the sale or placement of the notes, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5618 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, as the interest rate is dependent on passing on all three readings today, I would move that we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third reading.
Second?
Okay, motion and second to suspend the rules. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5618 carries on second and third.
Okay, item 27, I'd look for a motion to consider awarding a contract to Rutchins Construction Incorporated of Tilden, Nebraska for the 2019 Victory Road Water and Sanitary Sewer Extensions project for an amount of $765,387.80.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Steve, can you give us some background on this, please?
Mayor, Council, this has been a project we started about a year ago. It's extending water and sewer down South Victory Road to get water and sewer to an area of the community that's been within the city for several decades and has not had the advantage of those services. It also opens up some undeveloped area in that same vicinity for water and sewer services when those properties become developed. We're talking about Water District number 123 and Sewer District number 252. There had been a lot of conversation on this up front with the landowners over there. There is city participation in this as a function of that project. The bids, we did only get one bid from Rutchins. They've been bidding very aggressively here in the community. And we saw the bid come in at about 50% of what was anticipated between the two water and sewer projects. So what we were originally estimating at about 1.5 million, the low bid came in with the acceptance of the alternate at $765,387.80. So generally, we continue to see really good bid results on our water and sewer projects, and certainly this project is the benefit of such a bid. I'd answer any questions you might have.
Not many times we come in about 50% under what we estimate, so
Well,
I would say that's pretty good news.
yeah.
Steve, is there any indication on, I understood on the street issues that we had a prior meeting with everything going on in the state, but on a project like this, why we're only getting one bid? Any idea in the industry?
You know, we have a lot of underground work going on with the Northeast Industrial Water and Sewer, what we were referring to as that Rosh Dam Sewer Interceptor, and some other projects here. A lot of development going on with the several subdivision projects that came through the system in the last 12 months. So that particular contractor is here and local and busy and basically moving from one project to the other. And so there's an advantage here, low mobilization costs for them. And we're hopeful we continue to see this, but as we can, we've had the conversation as we're putting together our estimates. I don't know that we're willing to necessarily adjust the way we're estimating projects right now, because at some point I think that's going to turn around, and we'll be back to what our historical bid rates are.
I'm just curious on, do you know, in your experience, why we're not getting anybody else interested in bidding our projects?
Because we're getting bids that are about 50% of the engineer's estimate, and that's pretty hard to compete against. So, it's good.
Any other questions, comments, council? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
Voting in favor of the contract award, council members Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Murin, Jackson, Clausen, File. Voting against the motion, council member Weebelhaus. Motion carries.
Lastly, item number 28, I would look for a motion to hear a project update on River Point Square and consider authorization to re-advertise this project.
Your Honor, I'd make that motion.
Second?
Motion second, and Steve, please give us some background on this.
Mayor, Council, we had a bid opening last week for the River Point Square project. Fortunately, we had no bids to open at the bid opening. Since then, we've had some good conversations with the design team at Olson's and Associates, been working with Jan and her folks as well to create a path forward for this. What we see happening right now is taking that project, continuing to have some conversations with our construction industry in the area and rebid probably in multiple packages, at least 2 and maybe more. The constraint is going to be we need to do it in such fashion we still meet the grant requirements, and we're very confident that we're going to be able to do that. There's a heavy component of the project that is landscape oriented, and there's a second component that's more heavily street, sidewalk, curb and gutter type oriented. So we'll separate those and rebid those pretty quick. I would anticipate probably December. July. It's just a matter of turning those packages around. Like I say, we are going to meet Wednesday as a group and have some more conversation on that path forward from here. I know from a community perspective, we have pulled those parking stalls away from the individuals that were leasing those stalls. I think we will, in light of this, there's been conversation about whether we turn those back over, but I think we're going to keep those offline for at least a little bit longer until we get through the next week or so.
So we're looking for a plan forward to still try to meet the timeline on this, given that this is primarily grant funded and we do have some requirements related to that. Okay. Any questions for Steve on this?
I guess I'll ask this again. I think you misunderstood me on the last time. I see if you tried to bid this as, you said it's 2 different entities, basically, the landscape and the pavement. Again, based on what you know that's going on out here in the industry, any idea why nobody wants to bid anything like this?
This particular project has a lot of pieces to it that don't really fit any one contractor very well. There's about 1/3 landscaping, 1/3 hardscaping, a component of electrical in there, and then you got the whole street side. So In my conversations with a couple, but we had 16 contractors that were contacted, specifically contacted, with, you know, that those plans were available. Contact was done by the design team. I think we had, maybe half a dozen of those that actually pulled plans or looked at the plans online. And like I say, we got no bids back on it. So this particular case, it's a very different type of project.
Okay. Thank you.
And I guess I would just say I've had conversations with people in this field, and this is just a pretty abnormal year with flooding events and the work that has been redirected there for people. And so I think we're seeing that reflected in some of the bids that we're getting in or not getting in, and that's not inconsistent with other communities bidding projects right now. The world somewhat got turned upside down with the flood events that we had. But I appreciate this effort to go back, take a look at how we creatively can manage still getting this project done, given the time frame that's set up by the grant. So, and I think there's opportunity ahead to do that. Any other discussion, council? Done, please vote.
All council members present, voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
And that concludes this meeting of the City Council.